thank you for joining us. Jonathan is saying, start it up, get it rolling. So thank you all for coming at 4:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday. We know that we're at the farthest end of this building and the latest part of the day, so we appreciate you making the effort. I am Margaret McMahon. I'm Managing Director and Senior Vice President of Wemberley Interiors, the interior design studio of WATG. I'm based in New York and I'm privileged to be in Berlin for the conference. And with this wonderful team here, we've had some very animated phone calls, and I think that that's going to come out in sort of our conversation. I think that the best way to do this, if any of you, I'd love for it to be an interactive conversation. It's certainly going to be interactive up here. So we encourage you to raise your hand, ask a question, and be part of the conversation. I think that those are the most fruitful conversations to have. So I'd like to introduce first Jennifer Fox, and I love to do introductions because a lot of the times I think that people don't do themselves justice. So for those of you who don't know Jennifer Fox, she is a force of nature. That is number one. She's President International for FRHI Hotels Resorts, which is the parent company of Raffles Hotels and Swiss Hotel Resorts, and is president of the Fairmont brand. She's a veteran in the industry. She has over 25 years experience. I know, I'm not dating you. I've been doing it longer. I've been over 30.
So have I, actually.
Yeah. So I'm probably the oldest person in this room. So prior to joining Fairmont, Jennifer was COO of IHG for 10 years, and previous to that, she was with Starwood for 13 years. So she certainly has experience in the luxury and ultra-luxury brand space. Now, Sue Harmsworth, I was watching her for the last 2 days. And as I told Raj Chandranani in my office, I said, it's interesting, we have to all run around at WATG, but Sue sits in her bar stool at her booth, and they all come to her. Now, that says a whole lot. It's pretty incredible. She needs very little introduction. I feel that she's the leading visionary in the luxury spa space. And I loved reading her bio. A lot of this I didn't know about you before. Aside from being incredibly elegant, this all makes sense now. Following a long, successful career in beauty journalism and creating natural skincare product treatments, Sue founded Spa. And I have to tell you, it's the gold standard when you get to work with her. We're consider ourselves very lucky when she's a part of our team because she just brings magic to everything that she touches. Sue and her team, and this was pretty staggering to me too, Sue and her team can be found in over 500 spas in 55 countries. And is at the forefront of the ever-evolving industry of luxury spas. For us, that is a part of the project that is like a fine Swiss watch, and what she and her team bring to that process is really incredible, bar none. So Merrick Reichman, he is the car guy who is sitting right next to Sue, and I put Sue next to Merrick because she owns 3 Aston Martins. So I felt that they needed to be sitting together for sure. Merrick is Chief Creative Officer and Design Director of Aston Martin, Lagonda Ltd. And I have to read this because they've got pretty hefty bios, so you'll have to excuse me, I want to make sure I get it all right. For the past 10 years, which have been the most prolific for the company in launching new models, Merrick has directed design for the Rapid S. Now, I'm not a car person, so I get very little of this, but I'm pretty sure it's very important. The Rapid S, the Vanquish, and their recent flagship model, the stunning 177. I do know Aston Martin because I am a movie junkie, and there is nothing like James Bond. So that whole recognition is pretty incredible in itself. Merrick began his career at Rover Cars, where he led the overhaul of Land Rover design DNA, hence 2003 Range Rover. In 1999, Merrick joined Ford, and this is going to be something that you need to really pay attention to in a moment. Ford, and focused on Ford and Lincoln Mercury brands, resulting in the Lincoln MKX. Merrick's career has resulted in the involvement in such iconic, he gets a 2-page bio. Cars is Rolls-Royce Phantom, Lincoln MKX, and Navicross concept cars, and the Range Rover MK3. He really is a car guy. Eddie Taftik, Deputy General Manager of Development of Wanda Hotels and Resorts since 2012, is responsible for development and pre-opening of all overseas hotels. Eddie worked for Corinthia for 6 years. in Turkey and Europe, and also opened the most prestigious clubs in Asia. We didn't get to that part exactly, but afterwards we're going to meet to hear about it. So when Jonathan approached me to do this panel, originally it was the changing face of luxury, and then Sue and I got on a call and we started talking about, oh God, if we do one more luxury panel and everyone just goes blah, 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 I'm not doing it. And so Sue sort of agreed, and we got into this very animated conversation of what is luxury, how do you create luxury? And Sue made the statement that, well, you know, Americans don't know luxury. And I said, well, now, sister, you got me sitting up straight and paying attention. So let's talk about, the first thing I want to talk about is what really is luxury. We all have a sense of what we think it is. Clearly, I may not know what it is based on certain demographics, but I think that we really need to talk about what is luxury. I think that it is so debatable. And actually, why do we feel that maybe from this part of the world, there really has a provenance and a real sense of luxury, where in the US, where we're a much younger country possibly, we don't quite nail it 100%. So I'd love to get your perspectives on that. And when I think about it, so at first, just as an opener, I sat there for a few minutes after I got off the phone, and I was like, should I be insulted? I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. And then I thought about Merrick, the car guy. Not being a car person, I realized none of my friends who drive luxury cars drive American cars. So I felt that there was a great tie-in, and he's shaking his head like, you are so right. So I think that from the perspective of hotel operators, spa designers, and car designers, it's really important for all of us to understand what their sense of luxury is. You are first, Madame.
I'm first. Great. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Look, I always think that's an interesting debate about what really is luxury. I think that now, today, luxury's gone beyond the product. I mean, all of the consumers of luxury today, they're very sophisticated travelers, they're very global, they know what they like and they know what they hate, and their expectations are high. I mean, I always think too, when people say a product's going to be residential, I mean, I think that's the last thing you really want to be when you're in luxury, because everybody lives, our customers live so well at home today, so when they go to a hotel or to a resort, they actually want to be inspired, so they want to see something different and go, wow, well, I wouldn't mind that in my own home, because I think, you know, luxury still has to be aspirational, but it's way beyond the product today. It's all about experiences, and I know for the last several years we've all been talking about that, but all the research that you look at, everything that you hear, everything that you see in your own hotels, you really know it's more about giving people a great experience, because they expect the basics to be there. They expect to have a great bed, they expect to have fantastic restaurants, so it's all about being able to deliver that something special and that's something unique, and that's around the experience.
Great. So Sue, I'm going to qualify my question now, because now I'm really, the wheels are really turning for me. So is there sort of a je ne sais quoi to what luxury is? Like, is there something that is intangible of how you capture true luxury?
That's such a difficult question.
I know. Well, I'm going to get you back.
Well, firstly, I think that luxury is different in different cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and different demographics. And I wrote down the same word as Jennifer, experiential. So in China, for instance, and I'm not criticizing anything or anyone, it's just different. So in China, obviously brands are absolutely key. Bling is still key. There's a completely different requirement. In the States, again, we find that expectations are different. And then we find European, where the brands in some ways are still strongest, especially in luxury brands, if we're talking about watches and clothing and cars and all of that sort of thing. And I don't like talking about millennials too much either, because I think millennials are very different in America. So in America, we've got the mass affluent millennials, who are earning 100 grand plus. And then in Europe and China, we've got lots of millennials, but they're certainly not in that income bracket. So I don't really think you can generalize. And one of the things for me, when we're designing spas, is really getting under the skin of what owners are trying to achieve, because every culture is different. And I think you've got to identify the market that you're targeting and really get under the skin of who they are. So, for instance, I'm a boomer. I'm almost beyond being a boomer. So when you were talking about
Me
age,
too.
you know. So we've got different expectations than my kids who are in their 40s. I don't think we should overgeneralize. I think that's probably, and personalization, I've been saying this for a very long time, personal experiences and getting very real. So it's very difficult actually with technology. We're all so keen on guest histories and knowing what our guests like and all of those things. But if it's not personalised and it's not natural and it's not real, it then becomes an aggravation. And that's a challenge. It's certainly a challenge in our industry.
And then, Merrick, coming from the concept of cars. Now, I said to you all, I'm not a car person, which I'm really not. I'm not even going to tell you what I drive. But
tell us.
I did know it's not going to happen.
You're in New York and you walk.
Yeah, or take the subway or Uber. But I did have the experience of going to the Bentley Motor Factory and realizing that, I know, but listen, I'll take what I can
You
get,
can come to a real
okay?
factory.
All right, okay.
And they
But
just
I
take
had,
VWs and put a nice skin on it.
wow, we'll have to do another panel with Bentley in the room. But the thing that I really realized, I thought, I've always said anything with four wheels that gets me there, I don't care what it is, just as long as it gets me there. I realized that is so not true. That the day that you sit and experience a luxury brand car is the day you're like ruined for life. It's like sitting and putting your kid in first class when they're 6 years old and expecting them to go back to coach, in high school. It's just not going to happen. And I have to say, I walked out of there, so they kind of looked at me and I said, if I ever can own a Bentley in my life, and it was, you just sat in that car and the smell of the leather and watching them make everything by hand was incredible. So I get the car thing now and I appreciate the car thing now. So I'd love to hear your perspective on.
Well, I mean, I very much agree in terms of luxury being each to everyone in their culture and their country, and it is very different. And if we look at the world of cars, and going back to an earlier comment about, as the American car industry and luxury, it used to be there. If I look back to the 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were some incredible, and in fact 20s as well, you had some incredible marques that existed in America that were definitely the best cars in the world. And they were the most luxurious cars. So there is an understanding. I think luxury has just changed in terms of the American perception of luxury. And America does experiences incredibly well. There are car events. Pebble Beach is one, which is it's a luxury car event. There are more cars worth more than $20 million in one spot than you'll ever find anywhere else in the world. So is luxury wealth? No, but that's rarity. And is luxury rarity? Yes, for me it is, because it's unusual, it's unique. It's a personal experience, and I think the world of cars is that. So a Bentley is very different to an Aston Martin, but they both have leather in them. We happen to use Bridge of Weir leather from Scotland. They use someone else's leather, I have no idea, but they're both British car brands, but they're completely unique. We have a racing heritage. We're one of the oldest car companies in the world. We were established in 1913, and in 103 years, we've only made 80,000 cars. That's about 2 days' production of a Nissan factory. So that's what is luxury in the car world. It is very much rarity. And yes, you do become spoilt once you experience it because luxury treats you well. Back to the spa, and the luxury car treats you well. You actually feel better after your journey than beforehand, despite you may be stuck in toe-to-toe traffic in a megatropolis. You feel comfortable in your environment. You may even be late, but actually you're enjoying the experience that you're having. And that is very much about the materials around you, the authenticity, the story that you've been told by those materials, the story of you going to the factory, of it's all handmade, it's all hand-built, someone therefore built it for me. And guess what? You can come to one of those factories, you can come to our factory, and we've had a recent experience of someone wanting to have a pattern stitched into the headlining, which was the star pattern on the day that he proposed to his wife, stitched into a roof. So we can personalize cars, very much so. So that experience is really, really important.
Okay. Okay, and Eddie, we're going to have you round up this question.
Actually, that was a very good point. That the Chinese markets, what they expect, it's really like this. I mean, logos, brands makes the difference in the luxury, the understanding of luxury in China, especially. But also, I always say, I mean, in the hotel industry, in my industry, as a company born in China, size matters. So basically what that means is if you go from US to China, you can see the hotel room sizes, outlets, or per square meter given to each guest in an all-day dining restaurant or any for the Western restaurant or Chinese restaurant is massive. Even in the Chinese restaurants, you can see that they got 10-seater VIP rooms, which makes like 80, 90 square meters. This actually explains the luxury in China right now in the hospitality industry. And out of this, what's the Asian understanding and what's the Asian expectation from luxury is to be called by name. Wherever they move around in a hospitality, especially in the hotels, they would like to be recognized, they would like to be known by each department, let me say it like this, because when you go to a restaurant, you would like to call by name. This is very important for the Chinese clientele. And currently, yeah, we are trying to actually carry this to globally, actually. We are trying to carry it to US, Europe, Australia, let me call it Asia Pacific, basically. And I believe that still, even though we call it brands, logos, or size, or whatever it is, it works in overseas also. It gives the understanding of luxury and also the comfort.
See, that's where I think we underestimate who the guest is, because I love being called by name, and I live in New York, and there's nothing that makes my day more than being recognized by someone. If you've been in the hotel and the next day you go up to the club lounge and they remember your name. So I sat here and I was a little bit stumped because I thought, okay, now we're talking about experiential luxury. Do we really know where we all sit in this playing field? So I looked around a little bit and I read a new study by a luxury branding company based in London. And they surveyed 2.25 million travelers to rank the top 10 most popular luxury hotels and resorts worldwide in 2015. And I was really surprised. I thought that I knew where everyone sat in the space. And I'm gonna read this off to you. It's probably not the politically correct thing to do because they're probably every operator's in this room, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I know Muriel's cringing over there. But here are the top 10 ranked by 2.25 million travelers that travel internationally. Number 1, Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton, I was surprised. Oberoi is number 2. 3, Raffles Hotel and Resorts. 4, Langham. 5, Rocco Forte. 6, Dorchester Collection. Yeah. 7, Capella Hotels and Resorts. Interesting. Very, very interesting. 8, Park Hyatt. 9, Shangri-La Hotels and Resorts, and 10 Armani Hotels and Resorts. And I thought, now I really don't know where anyone sits. I was completely stumped. So the people that I thought would make the top 10, which was Four Seasons was ranked 13, Peninsula was 20, St. Regis was 26, and Waldorf Astoria was 50. So I'm trying to figure out the new luxury brands, who are they? But my biggest question is, who answered that survey? Who is the hotel guest? And when I sat listening to the editor of Wired magazine yesterday, I thought, first of all, I got to brush up on my technology because I have no idea how to even do an online survey. But I wonder, and I asked myself this question, if I really know who the luxury guest is. Now, we all sit down, we'll meet with Fairmont and talk about the demographics, the psychographics. You guys have picked out a destination, you've met with an owner, and you know exactly where the direction that you want to lead us. How do you know, is the experiential luxury guest changing, and do we know who they are? I'm not going to say the M word for millennials yet, because we're going to get to that in a minute. Do we know who it is, and are they constantly changing? Like this fast world where they say it's moving so fast, are we going to be able to keep up with it?
Want me to tackle
Yes.
Well, I'll tackle that. That's a meaty question. Okay, well, I think there's a few things in there, Margaret. The first one is, certainly from a brand perspective, we know who our guests are because we do a lot of research against our existing guests. We also do research against guests that aren't our customers, and we're targeting, competitors' customers. So we do a lot of research, and that gives us a profile on the demographics, and we also do our psychographic research. So we have a good sort of understanding of who our customer is. But then another thing I think is really important, and I think Susan raised this earlier, is that it's different by hotel. We certainly have a brand customer for our Raffles brand and our Fairmont brand, and actually, interestingly, Raffles skews a younger customer than the Fairmont brand, which is you wouldn't think so. It's kind of counterintuitive. But when you think about that customer for Raffles, they're typically very wealthy. They've got very high net worth individuals. We get a lot of the young sort of up-and-comings that have made money young and are now out there looking for adventure and experiences. But it's also very different by location, because what you might do in New York City might be a very different customer base than what you'll have if you're opening up a resort in Bali. So it's also not just looking at who your target customer is today, it's looking at who your target customer is for that specific location, because that could be a little bit different. But to your point on millennials, I mean, they are very much after, they want everything, they want it quick, they want technology to be very fast, and you've got to have the latest technology. But they're also travelling in packs, so you've got to think about that. When the millennial travels, they usually bring 10 of their friends along with them, so you've got to sort of think about the implications to that. They're very, much the Uber mindset. They want things immediately, and they want to be able to dial it up on their iPhone whenever they want it. So I think, we have to think about the customer that we have today and how that's changing as we move forward by constantly evolving ourselves and ensuring that we're talking to our customers and looking at the trends that are going on, and the changing trends in our industry.
Okay. So, Sue, how does that affect really the next generation? So if it's millennials, how are you seeing that affect your business? Is it a shorter experience? Is it much longer and more immersive? Or how do you address that?
Well, the trouble we've got, I think, is we can't generalise. And as I said before, the interesting thing about millennials, and I've got a lot of them in the family, so I'm tracking them quite carefully. Each site is different, and I think the clever companies have to keep very fluid and very versatile. And what we find, so to the point of doing forums and research and all of those things, I don't think they necessarily give you the answer, because the people who answer, I mean, I don't know about you, but those questionnaires you get through when you've been in a hotel drive me nuts. You get 1-2 days afterwards. I just delete them all the time. And I think sometimes the people who should be answering them aren't answering them. What we're finding is in the spas, certainly social aspects are much stronger than they ever used to be. And that's quite a design challenge because, for instance, most of our spas are 50-50 male-female, which we probably wouldn't have predicted 5-10 years ago. Some are 60-40, but the majority of city ones are 50-50 male-female. So never mind ages, you're talking sexes. The day spa market, which in our city centre spas is also 50% of our business, is often groups now. So groups of ladies of all ages. Mum will bring 2 daughters, or 4 friends will buy a day spa for another friend. So that's affecting the design. It's also affecting the treatment menus. I think one of the things in spas we're very aware of is the difference between city and resort. And there's too much generalisation about what people are talking about. Because again, apart from the cultural differences, it's, are you on vacation, are you on business? So the same business traveller will behave differently in different scenarios. And if I look at myself, I mean, I'm on a plane every week, I'm in a hotel 3 nights a week. I'm looking for different things when I'm travelling than when I'm on vacation. And I'm looking for different things when I'm travelling with my partner than when I'm travelling with my family, for instance. So I just don't think you can generalise. And I think you've got to be very clever with your data and very clever with your facts and really looking at who that person is. And again, I come back to culture, because in the Middle East and in Asia, South America, we're designing very differently than we are in other regions. So every region and every hotel is almost, you can't cookie cutter anymore. Back to millennials, I know you didn't want to touch on it.
Oh, go ahead.
But millennials in America are very big for us. They are definitely, and the Americans are obsessed with analysing their behaviour. And in our spas, they're very present. They're omnipresent. And they definitely want fast. The biggest challenge we have is getting their technology away from them. So you constantly have this debate. should we allow for technology in spas? Because the millennials find it stressful to have the technology taken away, but then the boomers don't want them around with their technology. You know, the last thing you want is mobile phones and iPads and tablets and all the rest of it. So that's a challenge, how we deal with technology in spas. But the millennials in America definitely have money, definitely using the spas, definitely into grooming at a much younger age, I would say, than the majority of Europeans, Middle Eastern Asians still. Because, as I said earlier, the Asian millennials don't have the disposable income that the Americans do, and nor do the Europeans. So the younger market for us is still a treat, what I call a treat market. So it's mum buying a day spa for daughter, or somebody buying it. Obviously, media have got, there is a high income bracket with millennials, but it's small in Europe and Asia compared to America.
So, Sue, I have another question to that. So when you said that millennials want to get through a treatment faster, you know, if they want to get in and say that they were there and they did it and then move on, is it that they don't necessarily, and I keep going back to our Americans don't know luxury, and I'm just going to harp on that for a minute, is it that they don't have the wherewithal to really appreciate the process?
I think I've bashed on for the past 40 years about journeys, and I'm sure a lot of you use spas. You still shouldn't walk into a spa, run into your massage. You should do the whole journey for a physiological reason. It's nothing to do with luxury or anything else. It's because it works better. If you take heat and you relax for even 10 minutes, and then you have a massage, you're going to get so much more benefit from it. And to your point, the millennials don't get that yet, but they will. And I come back to with spas as well. I don't think there's spas for pampering, so they're a treat and they're a luxury. Hate the word, but still we're using it. But you get to an age where you need spa. And it's when you need spa that you start to use spa for other reasons. So I now, whenever I travel, try and get a massage straight after travel because it makes me feel better. I get up and I get going much quicker. When you were 35, you didn't think about it. And so that, I think, is interesting for spas in particular. It's like everything. You don't know you need it till you need it. And it's, to me, I say, when you're young, spa is a luxury. When you get a bit older, it's a necessity and it's maintenance, you know, so you need it.
Yeah. So, Merrick, when we get into the car world, when we were working with Company B, we started to learn the whole psychographics behind different models of cars. And that was fascinating to me, where they come from, what their age group is. It's still a male world. I mean, the customer is still mainly male. How is it at Aston Martin? I'm really curious because Sue owns 3 of them. So is it more of a female-dominated car model or no?
Unfortunately not. No, it's 4% female purchase. So although Aston Martin, the female, it's more of a couple decision. So we get more and more couples coming to decide. Typically, it's the guy that's driving the car, but they're coming along for reassurance that this is an okay purchase for me.
That's fascinating.
So that happens a lot. We study, we research, so the average investment in a car is about 200 million. For ourselves, 200 million pounds. So we've got to do our research in terms of the longevity of the car. But it's as much about setting the trend that the customer isn't aware of as following a trend they know now, because the gestation period is about 3 years. So I'm sketching cars that are going to be out in 3-4 years' time.
Right.
So I need to understand things that they haven't imagined they're going to want or need or desire at that point. So that's a really important part of it. Therefore, you need to know them really well today, but you've got to look outside of your field to discover where they're going to be and what they're going to want. So, you know, as a for instance, who on earth wants an autonomous Aston Martin? But of course you do if you're stuck in end-to-end traffic in London because you want to hit autonomy, or if you want to impress your friends on a racetrack, you hit the autonomous drift button. Yeah, so you autonomously drift. So technology will become important, but it's how we define our brand, or I like to say mark, because we're 103 years old, and a brand for me is washing powder created in the 50s. A mark, a 103-year-old company, has a status, has a feeling, has a resonance with its future customers. So we need to understand who they are today and very much who they are going to be. And that's maintaining relevance. And how do we do that? Well, we design cars for fictitious characters that most people love, you know, and people like James Bond. And that's important because it's a fantasy. So you're creating a fantasy, you're creating an impression, you're creating a desire. But you're also selling something which has substance and meaning, like buying art as well. So I'm flipping across subjects. Why else would you buy an Aston Martin? Well, 95% of the 80,000 that we've made still exist. Some of them, luckily, those DB4s and 5s, are now worth a lot of money. And that's a really, really important investment. So 177, you mentioned, we made 77 cars. They're all sold out in 2012. They were an average price, well, they were 1.2 million pounds. They're now retailing at 1.9 million pounds. So it's an investment. So it's an intelligent choice as well. And we're understanding our customer now, but we need to understand where they're going. For instance, yesterday I met with a 22-year-old who's relatively famous. Actually, he's very famous.
Oh, come on, you have to tell us who.
I
Just give us
can't
the
tell you who it
initials.
was. But, you know, his face, walking around the factory, looking at people hand-building cars, was an eye-opener for him.
Yeah.
And that's someone who, when he got there, as we were talking, he was on his phone. He was wanting to FaceTime with someone. As soon as he went into factory, it went away. As soon as he saw the cars, he was not interested in that. It was his personal time with something. So it's about creating desire. And I think, you know, you do that by being, you know, to use the word cool, because you can't call yourself cool, because if you are, you're not. You're like the Fonz. You know, he wasn't cool at all. But other people have to say you are. And that means you transcend age. You transcend from 7 to 77-year-old.
And I guess that's really is all about the experience. I mean, you watch people walking across a car production line floor, and they're looking at the leather that they like. I mean, they're hand designing their car. So that's sort of my next question that I'm leading into, that we all have a pretty good handle on luxury, we think, and how are we going to forecast ahead? And I wonder if the co-branding and sub-branding, Willowstream and Fairmont, Aston Martin and Nokia, Aston Martin and James Bond. I love to look that you can drive an Aston Martin and you can have Aston Martin luggage. I think you can have Aston Martin golf clubs. I'm not sure. That's what I got from the website. Espa and Corinthia. Are these mechanisms to expand your reach in luxury and start to redefine that it's not just the hotel stay? It's, quite honestly, when I stay at a great hotel and then I get home and see my laundry room and see that I don't have, room service every day, I actually get depressed. So for me, it's sort of a reverse thing of like, I wish I could live in a hotel and have 24-hour room service, but I don't. But is it expanding and tying into partnerships that really expand that luxury experience and create that much longer experience?
Yeah, well, we really believe in partnerships at our brands, Fairmont Raffles. I mean, we've done some great partnerships. I think it's great to partner with brands that are at the same sort of level as you are, but outside of your category. So we've partnered with BMW, and we have a global partnership with BMW.
The B word again, the other B word.
But I think Aston Martin would be really cool in raffles, actually. I'm going to talk to you about that. I really do think, so we have a global partnership with BMW where we pick up our guests from the airport in BMWs, and we've also got a great partnership with Reebok, which I think is really cool because it's a program that we think changes the lives of our travelling customer. If you're a person that likes to work out, and you don't want to carry on luggage, then taking your workout gear takes up a lot of luggage space. So we actually provide it to our guests in their sizes. All they have to do as a regular guest is join our loyalty program, register with us, and then every time they arrive at a Fairmont hotel, there they'll have their workout gear. So it's a great program. We've also done some really good partnerships with raffles. We have a great partnership. We created a special raffles gin with Slipsmith Gin, so we walk back into sort of time and how their gin is created. And anyway, we found out that the guy who was the gin maker was related to Sir Stamford, who was one of the founders of raffles. So very interesting story.
Oh.
But I actually believe it extends you to a new customer base. It also does the same thing for your partner. It opens up a whole new world of customers for them. So if you choose the right partnerships, I think you can really add a lot of value to both partners. And in the end, it's the guest that wins.
Right. So, Sue, I'm curious as to, because I do believe that you are the queen of the luxury spa world, why you would even need to partner up with someone, or you felt that partnering up with Corinthia was a true endorsement of a luxury brand that you wanted to be strongly aligned with.
Well, interesting question, because I'm not a great fan of standalone spas, Margaret. So we partner with a lot of hotels, as I'm sure you know. And
Yes.
so we have several brand partnerships. We have a group agreement with One and Only. We do have a group agreement with Ritz-Carlton Global. So that's, to your...
That's very good for you.
Yeah, very good, but very different. So they're very different. And then we have a group agreement with Peninsula Hotels and many. And so the differentiators are what are important to us. But yes, when you're reaching a different consumer, and I go back to my original point that the same consumer can be in different situations at different times. And I think we sometimes underestimate that. So it's the same consumer traveling. So some of the young brands, we work with Mondrian, we work with Nikki Beach, we work with Edition. So you're constantly reinventing without losing your brand integrity. You're constantly reinventing through design, through treatment programs. Now wellness has become such a big word, I hate it, lifestyle. The biggest thing I'm seeing at the moment is I'm being asked almost weekly for spa hotels. So instead of having a hotel with a spa, it's a whole hotel. And I think going forward with partnerships is going to be really interesting, because this whole well-being lifestyle thing needs to carry on through hotels. So what I'm being asked to do increasingly is get in at the beginning of master planning more and more, because we're looking at food, we're looking at bedrooms, we're looking at lighting, we're looking at every aspect of a hotel as a well hotel or a lifestyle hotel or whatever it is.
Okay. Merrick, so when we were approached by St. Regis to do the first Bentley suite in the world, all I could envision in my head was there was a little kid sitting in that plastic car with a steering wheel and 4 little plastic wheels on it. I thought, how do you translate a luxury car brand into a hotel room? And what I learned is it's the subtlety and the nuances of that brand that a true Bentley follower or an Aston Martin follower follows, that they can pick that up. And what I also discovered, there is no one in this world like a gearhead. They will go into showrooms, and I'm sure you have this happen, and they don't even own a car, but for years they'll go and they'll keep track of the brand and sort of design in their head what they're going to do. So that I can understand. Would you ever partner up with a hotel brand? Have you gone into the hotel space before? Or what space would you want to go into and partner with to expand the brand?
Yeah, we haven't gone into a hotel yet. We have an ethos. It's called the Art of Aston Martin Living. What does that mean? It means we partner with like-minded partners, like Richard Mille watches, as a for instance. They make about the same amount of watches as we make cars per year. They excel. They're very young. They started in 1999, and they're one of the most successful watch builders or watchmakers in the world now, which is unusual in Switzerland, where you have 200-year-old companies. So it's about partnering with someone within that sphere of Aston Martin Living that complements who you are and complements our customer as well. So their life is enhanced. And that might be a partnership with a gallery, it might be a partnership with a spa, because that's what the customer wants in that particular time. So
Right.
yes, it would be very interesting to do. And why? Because you'd have the subtlety and the nuances of the spirit of Aston Martin within that environment. And that's what the customer wants. They don't want to see a wheel on the wall. It's the spirit of the company. That's what they want to feel. They want to feel as though they've touched their car world, their world, which is inspiring them because they're fans as much as anything.
Right.
And they adore and love driving these products. We end up with fans. We end up with, there are people who are buying cars for commercial reasons, or they look at the residual value. But there are customers, and we have about 4,000 of them a year, that are buying because they love the product and they want to take some of that enjoyment, that pleasure, into a different space, into a different arena, which is why we know we can go there, because we have this umbrella. So we've got yachts in the pipeline, we have a boat in the pipeline called AM37. Again, they'll be very, very exclusive products. We do sunglasses with some incredible technology over the screen. Why? Because we race at Le Mans in 24-hour conditions, in the rain, in the wet, and at night. And that lens has been developed to enhance your driving experience, because we have drivers that drive for 24 hours without stopping, literally. So they have knowledge that they can feed back to a supplier and say, look, this is what that product should do for you.
And I think what's really interesting, so we're now on number 3, Bentley Suite, and they're probably the most expensive suites that we've ever done. They're 1 bedroom, not very large. They cost about $1 million in, and they pay for themselves in 3 months. They have consistently paid for themselves in 3 months. And what that says to me is, when we're talking to owners, and I'm sure that we all have this conversation of, there is value in getting quality craftsmanship, and there is real value that will pay back much more quickly than you think, than making less expensive substitutes. And I hate the word authentic now, but when you really think about it, that authentic experience people are willing to pay for. And I never thought that I would really get that, but we got it from the car experience. So Eddie, your experience in Asia, I'd love to know sort of the partnerships that really resonate, because when I think of going into China, I always think of the big Prada store, the big Louis Vuitton, that there's such brand aspiration there that it's almost an obvious play. But am I minimizing it?
Not really, but I mean, as Wanda Group, I mean, we are doing something very different because we own a lot of brands under our holding group, right? Like Sunseeker, for example. So we try to partner up Sunseeker, which we own under our own body, use it in the hotels as a luxury service product. And out of this, for example, for our 3 5-star, even 1 4-star hotel, we are creating our own brands from the mattresses to the towels, to the bed sheets, and even to the spa products somehow. And currently our target is to brand it up as our hotel brands. And I believe this is actually the influence of the a bit of Chinese, a bit of the Asian, the habits, which would like to, make more sound, make more voice, make more name with the brand which you already created as the hotel management. So it works well for us, and for especially for Sunseeker currently, which we use on the band, which is in Shanghai right now. For example, there's a big demand for it. Of course, we have a couple of car brands, BMW to Bentley, from level to level, our hotel, the luxury levels. So we are using those brands. We are partnering up with them. But mostly, like I said, I mean, internally we are trying to use our own sources, as the Wanda Group holds the whole that's capability to build up or create their own brands.
Right. So, and Eddie, this question's for you first. So do you think it's possible to have tiers of luxury, where you've got your Wanda Rain versus Wanda Vista? Can you create tiers of luxury? Or, you know, a lot of times when we're working with the big operators, there's that, we always struggle with that brand blur. Like, no, that's such and such, don't go there. Is it possible to create those tiers of luxury?
I mean, those tiers of luxury, for example, from our brands, let me give an example. Wonder Rain is, which one is the like upper upscale, which is a top luxury brand. We got sink, which you wash your hands, right? Taps. So it's 24 karat gold. But we don't use the same thing in Vista. So basically, it's not a tier of luxury, but one of them is really a signature product, which is your showcase, which is just in a first-tier city, which you probably the price is not very different when you stay in there, but still you got that type of product. Or our Wonder Rain uses the Bentley for airport pickup, drop-offs, or whatever, how we serve clients, guests. But Vista have got a Benz, Mercedes. So if we call this a tier of the luxury, yes, there got some couple of differences. In the room, you use a massage chair or a normal sofa. So that's the only difference. But for the service-wise, which is for me the most important thing, which is to be recognized by name, to be called by name, those parts doesn't change, which actually names the luxury in Asia. This doesn't change. So for me, that's the only difference.
Okay. Yeah. And then Jennifer, back to you. So Fairmont versus Raffles.
Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation always has to be quality and it has to be service. So that's sort of, I think, the gold standard for any kind of luxury product. And then the rest of it is kind of segmentation. You know, you identify who your target consumer is for that particular brand, and then your brand is sort of built around, you know, segmentation. I mean, if you look at all the major hotel companies today, there's various levels of luxury from what I would probably call uber luxury or super luxury, which is your Raffles type product. Then you've got your luxury, you know, Fairmont. And I mean, Fairmont's positioned quite differently from Raffles in a sense that Fairmont is all about, you know, one of the specialties of Fairmont is luxury group. Now, Raffles does very little group business because it's designed to be a much smaller hotel, mostly, you know, 95% transient business, you know, much larger guest room product, because that's what that Raffles customer that's prepared to pay that premium wants in a guest room. Whereas Fairmont is still a luxury product, but it offers a slightly different sort of mix of rooms, it's got a much different business mix, it's got a different food and beverage mix. So I think that you can certainly have different levels of luxury, as long as your foundation is always based on service levels and quality and a real understanding of who that customer is for each of the different brands.
Sure, because, you know, and this question is going to go to Sue and Merrick together in a minute. But when you think about it, when we all started traveling when we were young in this industry, and down to the luggage that we used, you know, we sort of were traveling with Swiss Army or Tumi, and then we started to move up, and then we were in the back of the plane, and then we built up our miles, and we're in the front of the plane. It was like no going to the back of the plane. In the car world, and Sue, since you're an Aston Martin connoisseur, is there a hierarchy? Is there a starter car that people start out with? And then, because well, you know, it's kind of a ridiculous conversation. You will never know what I drive. But when you watch people in an aspirational, just saying, I want to get that car, is there a tier level? It might be the stupidest question, because as I have explained to you, I'm not a car person. But is there how you move up the ladder in the Aston Martin world?
Do you want me to start?
Sue.
Sue, go on. Good to hear a customer.
No. Oh gosh, no. I wasn't expecting to answer that question. Is there a tier level?
When did you buy your first Aston Martin?
35 years ago.
And there was no going back, was there? I mean, you were a diehard Aston Martin fan.
It's interesting. I had a question from Eric about why there's such a low percentage of females. You know, maybe we're powerhouses, Jennifer. I love
maybe it's their
cars.
marketing.
Maybe we don't know who our customer is that we're underestimating. That's what I mean.
I love
Do
cars.
we know our customer?
I've always loved cars. I was born in the 40s, and I had a car at 17 as soon as I was allowed to drive. I had an E-Type when I was 19, I think. I mean, so I've always loved cars. But with Aston, I don't think there's a starter car. I mean, I just don't think you can wear...
Well, no, you know what I mean. I mean, baby steps.
Entry level.
Entry level.
Well,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a 5-year-old one, basically. So no, there isn't. You can't have a luxurious brand and then have, or a mark, and then put something which doesn't meet the same value as the most expensive
Right.
car in that. And you set up another brand. You create something run by that organisation that has values and understanding, but it doesn't step on the toes of who you are, because if you do, then you dilute who you are. As soon as, you know, and it's incredible that you guys all have multiples of what you do, and but you have to control that so much, because if you get it wrong somewhere, you dilute so much. And if you have an entry product, it dilutes what the top of your triangle actually is. So you have to have. Our entry products, as I say, are a 3/4, 5-year-old car, which are aspirant customers who get into cars that obviously you buy a new car and it devalues. After about 10 years with our cars, they start to appreciate again.
Right.
So they're buying at a point where they're aspiring to it. It's not a new one, but they know it will grow in value.
I think if I can relate that, Margaret, to spas, because I do think spas are a bit different, and we debate this the whole time, because you can imagine it's very difficult to differentiate between a fun brand, so a Nikki Beach or a Edition, or which would probably, I don't know, I might say the wrong thing, but probably classified in a four-star plus market. And then we have a lot of, if we analyse and we do forums, our online purchases of product are aspirational. They're very different to our in-spa clients. And then our in-spa clients in a young, funky hotel are very different to our clients in a 5-star plus. So it is difficult, and you do have to constantly control that brand standard to make sure that you don't go too low. But with spas, and I think it's different to a brand like Aston Martin, which there is no question a luxury, uber luxury brand. I think with spas, it's a very aspirational product for a lot of people. So I don't think the same rules quite apply. And also you need the economies of scale. So for us as a brand where the commercial value of what we do is more in the product than it is in services, we have to get that exposure out there, but you have to be very careful about monitoring how. And to your layering point, also we have to be careful that we don't have too many spas in a city, so we white label sometimes and things like that. So we definitely layer, and there's definitely different formulas.
Okay. So I went to Hotel Zoo last night, and we went there for dinner, and I'm not sure about the other designers or hoteliers in the room, but I walked into this space and I thought, this is so amazing. And I had that moment of where I muttered to myself, why didn't we do this? You know, why didn't we design this? Or why didn't we have an owner that allowed us to do this? And, you know, you sort of sit up straight and pay attention, you take pictures and you take notes of, this is really inspiring and we should all be paying attention. So there are some people that I watch within our hotel space, within the luxury space, that I really have my eye on, that I love to say make me sit up straight and pay attention. So my question to all of you is, what development or brand experience that you weren't involved with intrigues you or you admire? Or actually, better yet, what keeps you up at night? Who is nipping at your heels that you want to keep pace with or outpace completely? Or is it no one for you?
Well, I mean, that's... look, I didn't see Hotel Zoo. Now I'm dying to go over and have a look, but I don't think I'm going to get a chance to do this trip. Look, I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing some really innovative things. And you know, the thing is, I think you just cannot be complacent. You've just got to be looking at what's going on in the market. You've got to be looking at trends, and you've got to be adapting. I mean, if you think about some of the new things that are going on in the market, you know, the Amani Hotel in Dubai, they've just opened a restaurant, and I think it's called Enigma. And what they're doing is instead of having a chef, they're bringing in rotating celebrity chefs 4 times a year. So they'll have somebody as a pop-up in residence for 3 months, and that rotating chef will go, and another famous chef will come in and do a pop-up. So people are out there doing some innovative things. There's a hotel in Japan that just is the first hotel that's open using all robots as staff. I mean, it's just incredible some of the things that can be done today. But I think you've got to be just up front, you've got to be looking at what's going on in the marketplace, and you've got to be innovating yourself. I mean, I had an interesting experience. We all talk about Airbnb and what's going on with Airbnb.
So glad you brought that up.
Well, I've used it myself over Christmas. I used it, and I never thought I'd be the customer for Airbnb, but I wanted to stay in Courchevel over the Christmas season, and it was booked out. So a travel agent sent me to Airbnb. I found an incredible luxury apartment, but what blew me away is the woman that owned this apartment said to me, "Oh, do you need any services?" I said, yes, I'm a service person. I need service. So she got me all my dinner reservations, all my ski instructor reservations, all my transfers from the airport. I mean, completely like I was staying in a first-class hotel. So people talk about Airbnb not being at that luxury end of the market, and it's coming. And I mean, the great thing is I think there's room in the market for it, but I didn't expect that kind of experience. So if you get that from an Airbnb, what should you be able to get from a hotel?
So did you go back to your office and say to everyone, because Muriel knows I am obsessed with Airbnb. I'm obsessed with it. Did you go back to the office and say, we've got a thing or two that we should look at? Or you were just kind of like, that is what it is, don't worry about it?
No.
Once in a
Look,
lifetime.
certainly it's on our minds. But as I said, Airbnb is supposed to be no service included. You've
Right.
got someone that owns it, and you decide where they're going to leave the key, and you pick up the key, and you go in, and you're in someone else's home. But this was an incredible experience. It was just like staying at a luxury hotel, because it was a luxury penthouse apartment, but she provided me the same hotels as a service.
So she was
the
like
same services as a hotel.
She was an independent operator within Airbnb.
Yeah, I mean, she just has this one
Pretty
apartment,
clever.
but she treats people as if they're staying in a hotel.
Will you go back?
Absolutely.
And that comes from Jennifer Fox, ladies and gentlemen. Sue, you are next.
Well, of course, there's no one snapping at my heels.
Of course not.
No,
so silly.
listen, the interesting thing about our industry at the moment is the whole well-being, lifestyle, wellness, whole hotel thing. That's a big topic, and you ask 20 people and you get a different answer. So that's going to be, we're really going to have to get that defined as to what's deliverable in the near future. It's interesting because people I watch tend not to be my industry, so I'm very interested in the art world and cars, obviously, and other things like that. However, in the hospitality industry, I have great admiration for Robin Hudson with Limewood and the Pig. And a lot of you may not know that, but it's quite interesting because I employ probably directly, not in the spas and everything, but just directly out of head office, about 350 people, 80% of whom are female. And they all just love the Pig. I mean, it's service orientated, it's comfortable, the food's amazing, it's organic, you go pick your dinner, all this stuff. I just think he's very clever and one to watch. And he seems to get on trend, almost ageless. It's got a lot of young people going, and they're very busy. I mean, he's just rolling them out. And I've stayed at Limewood. I mean, Limewood is obviously the much more expensive version, and I absolutely love it. And I'm really difficult to please. But I think that a lot of us live in this very pretentious hotel world, which isn't comfortable for us. I want amazing service, but I don't want it to be pretentious. And I think that's the hardest thing to deliver, is real people, who are talking real stuff, not quoting. And it's hard. That's hard. I realise that that's very hard. But I think he does that really well. If you don't know it, you need
Great,
to go.
I wrote it down.
It's very good.
Muriel and I are going.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So Merrick,
I think you have to have an incredibly open mind to every arena, everyone that's doing anything, particularly as a designer anyway, irrespective of working for Aston Martin. I'm a designer, so I have to think about what is coming, what's next, what's a new solution to a problem or an idea. That's our role. Our role is to have a brief put in front of us, which is a problem, and resolve the problem in a unique and beautiful way. So I think you've got to have an open mind. You are forever looking. You cannot rest on your laurels at all anymore. And you probably 20 years ago could, but you can't any longer because the world is so fast-paced. The world is smaller because, you know, everyone, all those people that want to take their iPads into the spa are looking all the time at what's coming next. Is there anyone snapping at our heels? I'd say exactly the same. No, because we're independent, and independency makes you think because you don't have all of the cash that a huge conglomerate has. We have to think smart, and you have to therefore use ingenuity to think of a solution that's a smart solution. Who am I looking at and admiring? I am overly eager to see and hear what Apple does and its world of autonomous cars, whatever they decide to do, and also Google as well, obviously. And what's Microsoft going to do? And will it affect Aston Martin's world? No, because they're commodities. However, that's the future thought of a millennial customer is maybe an autonomous Apple product. And obviously, when they become that 22-year-old who's got 18 million a year, I want them to be interested in Aston Martin. So it's understanding what they have with their Apple, Google, or Microsoft product that's got wheels on it that makes them choose that one.
Okay. Okay. Eddie.
Yes, I mean, just actually from another point of view is last 5 to 10 years, let's look at the hotels which were built and all. Not like Zoo Hotel or any other hotels which were built like 20 or 30 years ago, which they are not very exciting or very fun or really team-oriented and all. For me, I mean, from my point, major ones, majority. What happens is, how I look at it, especially in Asian market, is because mixed projects are going more and more in the current situation, and what happens is the owner or the developer wants to add more value to the properties which they are selling out. So that's why the hotels are much more cost efficient, and in a way that, okay, operator enters and 3 years later the hotel changes hands. So that's makes especially in the Asian market it's so hard to get a very special product which makes very big difference in the market from the previous projects. Innovative ideas, yes, they got innovative ideas. They got very good, like you said, chefs, the rotating chefs. These are in the services, yes, it's compensating, but somehow in the overall, to the facilities, when you look at the facilities, it's all same. Basically, same luxury, same sofas, same look, same lighting, cigar bars or restaurants or meeting spaces. I mean, yeah, that excitement for me, I mean, for the majority of the products which enter to the market right now is gone.
Okay, thank you. So we're at the end of our time. I could go on for hours with these guys, but I'd like to see if anyone has any questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Marek said. I think he actually hit the nail on the head when he talked about luxury in terms of cool. And that association with cool, and when I think of brands that are cool, I think of the Chanel, and I do think of Aston Martin. I'm a little bit biased, having Aston Martin as well. But I think what they've created is this emotional connection. I think they've created Aston Martin as timeless luxury. Their association, their partnership, so clever, so targeted, very tight, and that's why they don't associate with a lot of brands. It's like it doesn't have to try. I'm based in Dubai, and I see every other car, a Lamborghini. They're trying too hard. The Aston Martin cruises past. It's that association, that emotional connection that they create, and that's why I thought he avoided very cleverly the question of associating with a hotel brand. Because quite honestly, I'm from hospitality. I would have absolutely no clue who Aston Martin could associate with based on that coolness. And I think that's something from a hospitality point of view that we really need to work on in creating that real timeless luxury that is cool at the 18-year-old aspirational. There is no lead-in product, and that's why I respect it so much. They haven't done a budget Aston Martin. It doesn't exist. You're either there or you're not.
Right.
So I think from a hospitality point of view, it's more of a comment. The question is really that we're not there. I don't believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
When you look at the super luxury cars, basically you choose
Exactly.
mostly everything. Whereby hotels, you're getting basically a ready-made package. How much of customization you see happening in hotels? So basically, before the guests arrive, he can change everything within the space that he's going to stay in. More towards the uber luxury.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, customization and personalization is absolutely the direction that we want to go in. I think hotel companies are getting better at it because we know that customers want it, and we're doing that a lot through our loyalty program, sort of capturing information from our guests on what it is they want in their room. We certainly do a lot of it at Raffles. We're moving in that direction with Fairmont. So, you know, the vehicle for us to capture information on what our guests want is typically through our loyalty program. I mean, I think customization, when you customize a car, well, you're probably going to keep a car for about 5 years, but a hotel room you're probably going to keep for about 5 days. So in terms of furnishings and things like that, it's a little more complicated. But what you want in terms of, you know, what do you want in your minibar and, you know, how long do you want to stay? Do you want to check in at 7 in the morning and check out the following day at 7 p.m. rather than check in at 12 and check out at 10? I think we've got to get better at that, and we're working towards it for sure.
And the other thing that we investigated, we had a large retail brand come to us, and because of what we had done with Bentley, and they said, how can we do that in the retail world, in the fashion space? Well, there are new collections coming out every 4 to 6 months, so the shelf life of that is always changing. I think that the hotel brand specifically went to the car market because they are timeless and you have them for such a long time. I thought it was a brilliant partnership, and more people are obviously doing it. I think the one thing that you have to worry about, and I loved your comment about Aston Martin, it's like every other luxury fashion brand. Once it becomes commoditized and you see it everywhere, you suddenly don't want it. You know, for a while, and you can watch, people own Bentleys, then they go to Maseratis. I'm not quite sure what's next after that, but in Dallas, Texas, they do, yeah. So you can sort of watch it, and then that life, but it'll be interesting to see the partnerships that develop in the future with the hotel brands and people in either the fashion space or the art world or the car world.
We're having to personalise, not in a physical as in the room. You can't really change the room, but personalisation of treatments we've been doing it for a long time, but it's very difficult to deliver. And one of the challenges that we have with the hotel industry is they won't give us long enough training time. So in order to really personalise a treatment well, you need very high quality therapists and very well trained therapists. Now in our flags, so in all our branded spas, we would achieve that. And to me, the biggest luxury is time. So it's really important, you know, people can book 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of time and have a whole treatment tailored to them. And I think that is definitely the way forward, both for short and long treatments, but it is difficult to deliver. So if marketing people do it as a gimmick, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So oh yes.
Another question about the spas. How do you see the future of the spas? Your brand, the Six Senses, versus the ultra luxury fashion brands like Dior and Chanel that are opening now in Paris spas?
Very good question, and it's challenged to me every day. So owners think they want a fashion brand. What they don't understand is the complexity of SOPs, delivering standards, operations, and all of those things. So without me being rude about brands, Dior at Plaza Athénée has failed miserably. Guerlain has actually failed in most. Givenchy failed in most. I mean, people will fight that and people will tell me I'm crazy, but that's what happened. And it was because they didn't have the right products for spa treatments. They maybe had a few products for skin treatments, and they didn't have the infrastructure for training, for operations, standards and all of those things. They're retail brands, they're in store, it's a completely different business. So I'm very interested to see how they do in Paris, because you can't buy that expertise. It's quite interesting. You think you can go out and buy people, you actually can't. And from Espa's perspective, I have my core team of about 70 or 80 people who've been with me more than 15 years who live the brand and are passionate about the brand. And, you know, we've trained them in-house and brought them up that way. It's very difficult to go out and buy that. So I'm going to be interested to see how it works. But generally speaking, historically, it hasn't worked. It's usually owner-driven because they think they want the fashion brand.
Yes, one last question.
Yeah, I'd like to share with you all in hypothesis that probably the real luxury, not fashion, is more a question of, let's say, knowledge and culture rather than money and appearance. What do you think about it?
It was knowledge and culture,
Yeah.
did you say?
No. I know the right bottle of wine in that valley and not, you know, it's a matter of culture.
I think that's absolutely an important part of delivering a luxury experience, to have that knowledge and culture. You know, I think luxury is also about, you know, going into a place and being told a story. So if the if the sommelier knows that this wine was built, was bought and grown in a certain valley and can tell the story about it, I think that's all part of a luxury experience, is those storytelling opportunities by the staff. And we do train to that in our hotels, to be able to make sure that our people can tell stories about things such as food and wine and the materials. You know, if it's a new hotel and it's been designed, you know, what is the history of the design? You know, what is the inspiration? Where are the materials from? I think it's a very important part of it.
You know, we were just in a panel and they said at the end of the day, we all get hung up on what we're hearing from the editor of Wired magazine, how fast things are moving. What we can't forget is the guest experience. And someone stood up in the panel and they said, you know, we have a hotel in X location and there's no sense of place. For most of us who have been doing this for a really long time, that is extremely low-hanging fruit. That's probably the first thing that we commit to, of understanding where we're even going and who we're designing for. And I think that sometimes speed to market, there are all sorts of different factors that suddenly you're on a crazy schedule and a crazy budget, and some of those things get forfeited. But for us, and I'm not sure if you agree as well, sense of place and culture is paramount, and it results in, I'm going to say it again, authentic experience, and real and curated and crafted and authentic.
If I could just add, I think
Yes.
you're absolutely right as well, that knowledge, that storytelling is important. The adverse of that, you mentioned the wealth, if you like. You can't be arrogant in treating that wealth as though it doesn't have the knowledge. If you impart your knowledge to that wealth, they will grow as well and become a fan of yours. So I think it's really important to never be arrogant with whatever you do. You have the knowledge, but don't be arrogant with your knowledge. You share it. The ones who know the culture understand it. The ones who need to learn will come because they've learned something. They go back in their circle and say, you know what, I actually learned something there. Oh, I'm going to try it. So I think that's how for me, you attack both.
Yeah. So we are way out of time. I want to thank you all for attending, and please thank our wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator.